Hello, church. Hope all is well with you today and hope that you have a wonderful day. Today we're studying out of Ezekiel 19, and this is a lamentation. A lamentation is a sorrowful song. It is a passionate expression of sorrow or grief. And we see this here, and this is about the nation of Israel and at the end times. And a little background on this is that Josiah was the last good king in Judah. It said he did right in the sight of the Lord. And he was killed by Pharaoh Necho of Egypt. Now, Egypt and Assyria had allied together and they were opposed to the Babylonians. And we start out here in the first 4 verses here has to do with the Egyptians. And after Pharaoh Necho had killed Josiah, they made Jehoahaz, his son, actually king. And that was in 609 BC. He was king for actually 3 months until Pharaoh Necho came in and captured him and put him in chains and ended up taking him back to Egypt. And that is what the first 4 verses here is about. And he also made Jehoiakim king in his place. And he was also a son of Josiah. Now, the first 4 verses here says, "What is your mother, a lioness?" This means Judah, reference to Judah. Verse 3, she brought up one of her cubs. And then, of course, it talks about the evil that he has done. And then the end of verse 4, it says, "And they brought him with chains into the land of Egypt." So that was King or Pharaoh Necho. And then in verse 5 through 9 is where the Babylonians get involved. And in 597 BC here, Jehoiakim is taken by the Babylonians, and he is put in chains. And his son, Jehoiachin, reigned for 3 months, and he was also captured by the Babylonians and taken into chains. And that's what these next 5 verses talk about. And in verse 5, and she took another of her cubs and made him a young lion. So Judah took one of the sons of Josiah and made him king. And he lasted for 11 years there. And his son actually only lasted 3 months and 10 days, as scripture tells us. And they put him in a cage in verse 9 with chains and brought him back to the king of Babylon. So we see that they both, the first 3 have been captured, and one taken back to Egypt, the other 2 back to Babylon. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar made another son of Josiah a king, and he renamed him Zedekiah, and he reigned for 11 years from 597 BC to 586 BC, the year that the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of Jerusalem and when Jerusalem was burned. And if you want to read about this in 2 Kings 30, 23 through 25 and 2 Chronicles 36. And then as it goes down to verse 10, it says, your mother was like a vine and young in your bloodline. And the next 2 verses talks about the past. It must have been David's time and Solomon's time when things were going very well for them. And the vine, of course, is Judah was the vine. And then in verse 12, it says, and she was plucked up in fury, and this is God's judgment. And as we read down through that, we see that fire consumed them. And this was the burning and the destruction of the temple in 586 BC. So we have a lot of history here, and this is again, a sorrowful song that expresses the people's grief and at the end of Judah. And this actually ended the kingship of David's dynasty, and it was silenced for 400 years until Christ appears. May God bless you today. May you have a wonderful time and they enjoy reading your word, Ezekiel 19.